Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Eva Gerling Snyder. I use she, her pronouns. I am an educational technologist in learning design services here at UMass Boston, which means that I help faculty and staff with educational technologies, including Canvas, but also additional technologies such as Use Your Panorama. Okay, so when you first access Use Your Panorama, and let me actually open up a tab with that, you will see the option to log in with SSO. That will drop you into a spot in Use Your Panorama. Typically, for most of you, it will drop you into Doc Hub. I am an admin in the platform, and so it's dropping me into a slightly different place. But for most users, it will drop you into Doc Hub. This is where staff will mostly live, is here in the Doc Hub area of Use Your Panorama. And just a quick overview of what the platform does and what you can accomplish with it. Use Your Panorama is an accessibility tool that allows you to upload documents and files of a wide variety of different file types, and then run accessibility checks on those documents and generate alternative file formats for those documents. I'll talk you through what all of those things mean as we go through the things that you can do. Your Doc Hub is essentially your private home for all of the files that you need to run accessibility checks on and make accessibility improvements or changes to. You can, in the Doc Hub, you can create folders and you can upload files to those folders. I would think of it similar to Google Drive or OneDrive. You can structure your folders and arrange and organize your files however you see fit. You can also share individual files and folders with other users. So if you have other folks on your team that you're looking to collaborate on accessibility with, then you can share any relevant folders or files. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click Create Folder here. I'm going to create a folder named Training. This is April 6th. And that folder comes in blank. And in here, I can add an additional folders, subfolders, or I can add individual files. And when I go to add files, I can add files from my computer. So I can select the files that I want to use. Here I'm going to go to all of the testing files I have, and you can select multiple files on your computer. So you can just drop in as many files as you want here, and it will process those files one by one. This can take a little bit of time. You'll see when you first add files to Use Your Panorama, you'll see that they have this icon that looks like a kind of incomplete circle with it's purple, an incomplete circle with a person icon there. This is the accessibility icon that Use Your Panorama is going to show for any of your files. The purple circle is indicating that this is processing. So this is in process. We do not know the accessibility score of these documents yet, but if we give it a little bit of time, it will process these and we will get one of 3 different icons for these documents. I'm going to give this a quick refresh and see if these files, okay, they have now processed and so the accessibility icons now displayed in the top left corner of these documents. There's one of 3 accessibility icons. There is a green hexagon. The green hexagon indicates high accessibility. There is a yellow or orange triangle, and that indicates medium accessibility. And then there's a red pentagon, and that indicates low accessibility. So these categories are entirely dependent upon the score of the document based on what Use Your Panorama has scored. There's a scoring model behind the scenes that identifies all of the accessibility issues with this particular file and then gives them a weight and calculates a score according to those issues. We have a document here, this PDF accessible document that is 99% accessible. And if I open up the document that's there's a single minor issue that needs to be addressed, but this one is being scored very highly, hence it's got the green high accessibility score. On the other hand, some documents can be as low as 0%. 0% is common when you have critical accessibility issues, such as a scanned document that has not had optical character recognition or OCR run on it, which means that the text content of the document is completely uninterpretable by assistive technologies. So these documents here, this one is specifically an inaccessible scanned document, is scoring with a 0 score with a severe issue of the document being scanned. So you'll see these scores as soon as your documents and processes, you'll see these scores. And you'll see those icons indicating high, medium, or low accessibility. I would encourage you not to get too hung up on those scores. These scores are automatically calculated based on the issues that the platform has identified. These scores are not by any means the definitive word on the accessibility of these documents. So a higher score, while generally good, does not necessarily indicate an accessible document. And a lower score, while generally bad, does not necessarily indicate an inaccessible document. These are tools to help you identify what needs to be changed to improve the accessibility of the files that you've uploaded. But please recognize that these are tools and that these are not the kind of end-all be-all scores for these documents. So take them as they are, rather than identifying these as kind of a 99% accessible document means nothing needs to be done with this document. That is not necessarily true. When you click on any of the documents, you'll bring up a pop-up menu here. And the top portion of this menu indicates the score of the document. You'll see a badge that indicates how many issues the document has. And if you click anywhere in this accessibility report box, it will bring up the accessibility report where you can identify and fix accessibility issues. I will say you should not click on reprocess typically. Anywhere else in this box will bring you to the accessibility report, but reprocess will simply restart the scan of the document in order to determine its accessibility. So typically you don't want to click reprocess. This bottom area here is your alternative file format. So this will differ depending upon the source file format. Most PDFs will include a wide variety of options, but some file types, such as say an Excel spreadsheet, may have fewer options available here. These options include if it is not a PDF, you can download as a PDF. In this case, you can still download as a PDF, but it is already a PDF. You can generate plain text files. You can do immersive reader or gradient reader, which are similar but slightly different from each other. You can generate EPUBs, which are used for e-readers. You can generate audio versions, accessible math formats, language translations, electronic braille formats, and so on. These are not typically going to be used by most staff, but I did want to make you aware of your options for what you can do here. And one thing I want to recommend folks is that you, instead of generating a PDF from, say, Microsoft Word or other Office programs, I recommend uploading the original source files for your documents, your docx's, your PPTx's for PowerPoint, etc., and then using UsePanorama to generate the PDFs from here. That will give you more flexibility in your versions because you'll have an accessible source version that you can also generate a PDF, an accessible PDF version from. And if you need to make any changes back in the source program, you have both that accessible source document that you can work with and the accessible PDF that you can work with. So I encourage folks to generate or to upload your original source files and then generate PDFs afterwards wherever possible. It will make your life easier. let's get into, and I'm actually gonna grab, I saw, Patrick shared, an example document. I'm gonna see if I can grab this document to throw it in. I've also got, an example from another attendee who shared something. So give me a minute to, this is eventually maybe it will load for me. Okay. Um, So I'm gonna upload this, and let's see. Okay, I'm uploading a few additional files that folks have shared with me. So thank you for sharing those. Those will take a minute to process. So for now, I'm gonna show off some of the things that you'll be doing in Use Your Panorama using some of these examples I already have pre-populated. So. First things first, a lot of the most critical accessibility issues with documents are typically two major issues. We have one, you might have a document that is scanned, and these scanned documents need to be run through OCR or optical character recognition so that the text in those documents is fully interpretable, understandable with assistive technologies. The second one is you might have a document, especially a PDF, that is interpretable. The content is readable by assistive technologies, but it is what is called untagged. And that means that it does not have the structural elements necessary to effectively understand that content and navigate that content. And these issues will typically show up as severe issues. All issue types are categorized as either severe, major, or minor. And these severe issues are typically going to mean that your document is scored red or low accessibility. And these issues are going to present significant barriers that may make a document either completely inaccessible or inaccessible with some additional complications with the document. So we really need to address these severe issues first and foremost. Anything that has these severe issues will typically have fixed issue right here. So we have highlighted here, this document is scanned. And if we had multiple issues, we could kind of click through and see those individual issues. When you select an individual issue, it will typically over on the left side of the screen where you have the preview of the document, it will show you in that document where this issue is located. Some issues apply across the entire document, and so you'll just see them as a little yellow box in the top left corner. But other issues will be highlighting specific content in your document. So if you have an image that does not have alternative text, then that is going to say missing alt text, and it's going to highlight the image where it's missing that alt text. So you can also click Learn More on any of these issues. And I encourage you to do this if you are less familiar with accessibility best practices. If you're very familiar with accessibility practices, then typically you won't necessarily need to follow through the Learn More. But for folks who are more beginners on their accessibility journey, I encourage you to click on that Learn More because it'll give you information about what this particular issue is. In this case, unlike a normal PDF, a scanned PDF's text cannot be selected and their pages are images. This matters because screen readers will not be able to read the content of the PDF. So this is a critical issue to address. So I encourage you to click the Learn More whenever you see these issues if you do not know why this is a particular accessibility issue. When you click on Fix Issue, that will take you into an area where you can fix that issue. What you see here depends on the issue at stake. So if I had mentioned before, for example, we had an image that is missing alternative text or alt text, that image would allow you then, when you click Fix Issue, to insert alt text. So you could type in a description of that image and add it to the image here. In this case, because this particular document is scanned, what we need to do is we need to run OCR. And it's going to give us an opportunity to choose between two options here for how we run OCR. We have overlaid and we have reconstructed. And the platform gives you effective directions on which of these to choose. So overlaid, it recommends for complex content. And reconstructed, it recommends for more simple, straightforward text content. This is a very simple, straightforward text-based document here. It's a syllabus. And so we're just going to do the reconstructed PDF. And then we'll click Add Fix and proceed to review. If you have multiple fixes, you can queue them up here. You can add all of these fixes and then you can apply them. You can apply them one by one, but I'll talk in just a minute about why you might not want to do that. So I typically recommend queue up all of your changes and then click Apply Fixes. When you click Apply Fixes, User Panorama will make all of those changes and then reprocess and rerun the accessibility report on the document. It may take a little bit of time, but we'll get a new score here. In this particular case, the reconstructed PDF actually did some things we didn't really want it to do to this document. So I'm actually wanting to go back and redo this step. And I want to talk about how to do that. At the bottom of this area here where the accessibility report is an area called Update Document. And here you can upload any changes that you need to make outside of User Panorama. You can upload a new version of this document and store it alongside the original version because User Panorama has version history. So it includes every change that has ever been made to this document since you first uploaded it to User Panorama is available in the version history for that individual document. So I did not like how this one did the OCR with the reconstructed. I want to go back and do overlay. So I can just go back into the version history and click restore version. And I want to restore it to version number 1. And it will reprocess that document again. And it's going to restore it back to that original state. This creates a new version. So when you have this document, we have the original document with version 1, then the change I made, version 2, and then this new version that when I roll back to the original one has its own new version here. So we're back to square one with this document. This time I'm going to choose overlaid PDF, apply the fixes, and let it take its time to generate. You can always close this. You do not need to keep this open if you do not wish to do so. In this case, I'm going to leave it open because I want to keep working on this document, but you can always close it and move over to other things. So this is, with the overlay, has produced a document much closer to my original document. Typically overlaid is going to keep the visual layout of the document identical. And so we've got this document now with, if I select the text, this is selectable text, this is interpretable text. Now we see that we have two new issues that have arisen. This is common if you take a PDF that's been scanned or in some cases untagged, and you run it through, you fix that issue, you'll see new issues pop up because these issues did not even exist until the document was interpretable by running it through OCR after it was scanned. So now we have two issues. We have the title is missing from the document's properties, and the item does not have an alternative description. This particular first issue, we can learn to say, we can click on learn more if we want. It's going to tell us why this is an issue. It doesn't include it in its metadata, which can make it harder for users, especially those using screen readers, to identify the file's purpose. So what we can do here is we can add a title to the document. So I'm going to say Introduction to Physics for Syllabus. Okay. Then the second issue is that this particular image does not have an alternative description, alt text. And here we see an example of the platform identifying which content this is. This is really useful if you've got a lot of images. It's going to highlight the individual image that you're working on, and then you can enter alt text. There is an AI generate alt text. I do not recommend you use this because the alt text it generates is typically very bad alt text. So I would never use that personally. In this case, this is essentially this image is representing the text of accessible university. This is effectively the only important critical information we want to communicate with this particular image. Its context in this page is it's communicating accessible university. So we will use the alt text accessible university. There's also a checkbox for this image is decorative on alt text specifically, and this is only something you want to check if the image has no semantic content, no meaning associated with it, that you are communicating with this particular image is purely embellishment or purely decorative. Then you can check this box, and that will mean that the image does not have alt text at all and is not read off to users of screen readers and other assistive technologies. So I'm gonna add this fix, and now we've got two fixes. We've added the document's title and an alternative description. We can click Apply Fixes, and we can go off and do something else. And once this is processed, okay, great. This is processed now to 100%. No issues found. I will note that this does not necessarily mean this document is 100% accessible. As I said, this is a tool to help you identify potential issues. Please do not take this as meaning that this document is perfect. There is a tool attached to UJapanorama that can help you make additional manual checks to help you improve the accessibility of your documents. And that is called structural remediation. So you will see a little box here labeled structural remediation. And some issues will actually, instead of fix issue, will have a button that says structural remediation because some issues can only be fixed in structural remediation. This tool is a bit more advanced, so I recommend to folks only to dive into structural remediation. One, if you have experience with accessibility, and two, to fix or address certain specific issues. Structural remediation is going to expose to you the structure of the document. These are the tags of this PDF, and it's exposing those tags to you and allows you to make changes to those tags. That is extremely useful, but also potentially for folks who do not know exactly what tags should be and which content should be labeled and tagged as what, that can be overwhelming. And you could end up in a situation where you get in here and you start making changes and you make the document less accessible than it originally was. So that's why I recommend mostly stay out of the structural remediation with a few exceptions. One exception here is reading order. If you have documents or content that isn't fully linear, that doesn't just go straight down the page, but you've got columns or you've got other visual content that might not be strictly linear, then you want to check that the reading order of the document is following the correct order of how that content should be read. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are all following. So Accessible University at the top is 1, Introduction to Physics and Course Syllabus is 2, etc. If you click on any of the, or mouse over any of these individual elements in the tags, it should highlight that element for you, and it's going to have that number to indicate where in the reading order this item is. So we can see that this is following that order here. However, Tables get a little bit more complicated, and table accessibility is a pretty complicated topic, something I am not going to have the time to cover in depth here. But if you have tables that need to make accessible, you might need to make some changes to that in this structural remediation tool here. For instance, a common thing is some tables may not have the header cells. The very first row is your table header typically. In some tables, you might also have a table column. So your very first column might need to be a table header. And those may not always be correctly interpreted. Panorama will often flag tables that do not contain headers, but it's worth double checking your tables using the structural remediation, learning more about how tables should be structured and what that looks like from an accessibility standpoint. This is something where you will likely need to do additional learning outside of User Panorama because, again, tables are pretty complicated from an accessibility standpoint. So I encourage you to read up on table accessibility. One thing you can do in here is you can rearrange items. So if this particular number 3 heading, textbook, was not in the correct reading order, I can click and drag it and move it to a different order. So now this textbook one is at the 7 slot. And so it's going to read Accessible University, the image at the top, which now has that alt text. Then it's going to read Introduction to Physics, course syllabus. And then it's going to move down to the paragraph, our sole text for this course, etc. And move on. And then in the 7th slot is going to read textbook. That is obviously incorrect here, but I just wanted to demonstrate to you that you can reorder and rearrange reading order just by clicking and dragging here. You can also change the tags that are being used. So if you click in on any of these, you can select the element type and you can change it to a different type of element. Typically, if you have User Panorama run the tagging of your document, you have a scanned PDF or an inaccessible PDF, and you have it auto tag. Typically, it's going to be pretty good about giving accurate tags, but obviously it's doing all of this automatically, and so it can miss things and can misidentify things. So going in here and changing a tag to a different, more accurate tag can be a relevant thing for you to do. I would encourage folks again to Google about PDF tag accessibility and learn about what tag types are appropriate for what types of content. They don't really give you much guidance here in Panorama for that. I would highlight one particular one that can be useful for folks, which is if you have something that is included in this reading order, but it should not be. It is purely decorative. This is somewhat common if you use complex design programs such as Adobe Photoshop, InDesign, Acrobat, etc. And you produce these files, you might have elements that should not be included in the reading order of the document. They should not be interpreted because they are not meant to be a part of the structure of the document. You have this option to mark these as non-structural. It's marked here as non-struct. And if you select that, that will mark that item as non-structural, which means that it is not interpreted as part of the content of that document. So that is one of your options, but there's a number of other options here as well. So I encourage you to dip your toes into the structural remediation with the caveat that it is fairly complicated and mostly used if you understand what you are doing to ensure that the order is correct and that these tags are appropriate for the content of the document. Unlike Elsewhere in User Panorama, you'll need to just click the Save button in order to apply the structural remediation changes that you've made to your document. This is essentially a separate tool from the rest of User Panorama, so it operates in its own little environment, and you'll need to click the Save Changes, and when you do, it's going to reprocess that document and start it all over again. I want to go through these same steps with a few other documents from folks. Let's take this document that someone provided. Thank you for providing an example. And this is perfect because we have a document here that is not scanned. We can select the text, but it is untagged. So this is one of the other critical issues that I indicated is pretty common. So we're just going to click Fix Issue. And again, we need to select overlaid or reconstructed, and I'm going to do overlaid because of the visual complexity of this content. And I'm going to apply that fix, and then it will reprocess the document, tag it with appropriate tags. And we'll want to double check the work that is done, make sure everything's good there, and fix any issues that is further identified. I'm going to go ahead and exit that one and maybe run it here on, okay, we've got a great, more visual document here. This one it is not untagged and not scanned, so we do have other documents or other issues that are being flagged here. This one has 13 issues total, and this brings me to one of the options that you have here under Review Issues. If you click the three dots and click View Issue Types, that will highlight for you all of the issue types in this document and how many of them there are. So there are 9 images that don't have an alternative description or alt text. There's one instance of the document not having any headings, one of the title missing, one of contrast, insufficient contrast between foreground text and background, and then one of reading order. And we can go through and work to fix these. We actually have in this document, you'll see 3 different buttons here. Most things will read fix issue, but reading order specifically will read check issue, because this isn't saying there's anything wrong, just that you need to double check the reading order of this document. And to do that, it's going to give you the option to just check a box saying that you've verified the reading order. But to do that reading order check, that's where structural remediation is very helpful. So I would want to open up structural remediation and check the order of this document. And in this case, it's starting with this image in the top left corner, and then it's going to the main title, New Voices, New Stories. And then if we go through and double check, sometimes there's a lot of kind of mess in the tags. So this can be a little bit challenging to go through. You do have the option to have Panorama re-tag your document, which may be worth doing here just to make sure that it maybe cleans up some of these unnecessary extra tags here. There's a lot of tags in this, a lot of nested tags, and it gets pretty complicated here. So we could always rerun and re-tag this. I'm going to go ahead and do this here. If we need to, we can always roll back to a previous version. If we like these tags less, if they're less accurate, we can always roll back to that previous version. I'm going to go back in here. Okay, this one's still processing. It can take some time for it to process, so I'm going to give these a minute to process. Please let me know if you have questions at this point. I'm happy to answer them. And then, okay, so in chat, do all export formats retain adjustments, alt text headings, etc.? Yes. So if you make any accessibility changes, Panorama creates a new version of that document, and that is your current version of the document. So if you're accessing it from the Doc Hub and you just click on a file, you're clicking on the most recent version of that file. Then from there, if you click to generate one of these alternative file formats, it is applying all of those accessibility changes that you've made to that document to that alternative file format as well. So any further copies of that, you can generate these different file formats, and it's going to have all of those changes. If you need to make changes outside of Panorama, which can be something you might need to do, then what you want to do is you just want to click on the file and then download the source file. That's going to give you the file in its kind of default file format. In this case, we have a PDF, so it's going to give us a PDF. And that will give you the most recent version of this file with all the accessibility changes you've made. Some folks might need to have something hosted in OneDrive. If you need to upload it to your department or unit's website, then that's something that you would want to download the source file and then upload it through Terminal 4 to your website. And so the source file download here is going to be what you want to use after you've made those accessibility changes. Okay, so somebody says, I understand Yuja is not the end-all accessibility checker and more of a starting point, but thinking about documents on the site that we are trying to make accessible, what defines a document as being accessible for the April deadline? I noticed, as you said, that even with a 100% score, it can still come up with a lot of WCAG or PDF/UA problems that need to be fixed in compliance. So I guess I'm just looking for a baseline as to what is appropriately accessible for the website. If it passes Yuja and Adobe checks, is that okay? Or does it need to meet the exact WCAG standards, which require a bit more than just Adobe and Yuja? Excellent question. Thank you so much, Will. So a few things I want to say. First of all, multiple accessibility tools is an extremely helpful way to ensure accessibility of your documents. Do not rely upon a single tool. Add Yuja Panorama to your toolbox for accessibility, but use other accessibility checkers, including Adobe Acrobat has built-in tools for accessibility. Use those tools alongside Yuja Panorama because where one tool may have gaps, another tool's gaps may be different. It's kind of a Swiss cheese model. You have layers of Swiss cheese, different holes and different layers, but hopefully if you use enough layers, then you can help ensure and catch as many issues as possible. At the end of the day, the WCAG standards are what is legally mandated. So the WCAG 2.1 standards, based on the ADA Title II rule, are what our documents and content need to meet. Yuja Panorama, Adobe Acrobat, everything else is using WCAG standards as its basis to help determine and identify issues. But at the end of the day, we are not responsible to Yuja, to Adobe. We are responsible to those WCAG standards. So that does require some additional human intervention. Accessibility cannot ever be reached automatically by any tool. And so you absolutely should be working to learn about accessibility and accessible document creation yourself and double checking documents, even the ones that have scored at 100%. Okay, I've got the download. I'm going to download this. And let me get this document uploaded. Okay, I'm uploading this document as well. Okay, I want to take a quick look at this document that we ran through this. So we see here we have a few additional issues. We have the language needs to be set here. This is simply a quick fix of choosing the language of the document. This is to ensure that it is effectively read out and interpreted by assistive technologies. We can add that fix. We have the reading order fix, which we can, again, launch the structural remediation, and we can work our way through and identify this. We have an issue here, which is that this particular document has, the platform has identified this first bit of content as a header, University of Massachusetts, Boston, etc. Then the following content is a paragraph. That is correct. UMass Boston students must obtain, etc. Then it skips down to we have a chart with courses and credit hours and equivalencies. And then at the bottom, we have additional information and content. However, that chart has not been interpreted here. Well, maybe it has, but it is not highlighting it here. So this is something where I do not know where the table rows it's identifying here are. Um, This is something where the structural remediation tool is kind of presenting some conflicting information. I might want to download this, open it up in Adobe Acrobat, double check that the tags are appropriately applied here, that this table is actually being interpreted. Again, every tool has gaps, every tool has issues. Use multiple tools to help you meet accessibility. I'm going to go back and exit out of here. So we have the table doesn't have a header. We have the language needs to be set. I already did this, and we have checking the reading order. So once we've made those changes, we can apply changes, reprocess the document, and have it rescan from there. I want to hop over into this document that has scanned. Okay, so are we looking for what it's doing with the black regions here around the document? So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to do the fix issue. And since this is simply a text document, I'm going to do the reconstructed. If it does not work how we want, we can always do the overlaid in the future. But I first try to do the reconstructed, see how it works, see if it is appropriately interpreting the content of that document. And if it works well, we can keep that. If not, we can revert back to the previous version and do the overlaid if we need to do that. We see this document is still processing that flyer that we had, the one that was new voices, new stories. That one's still processing. Visual documents can take a while, so it can take some time. Please be aware of that. I want to show a couple things that I haven't shown yet, which is sharing files, first of all. So if you have an individual file you want to share, if you mouse over it, you can click share and then enter the emails of anybody you want to share it with. But you can also do this in your DocHub. Let me just click on home here with a folder. So you can click on the three dots next to a folder, click share, and add a user or multiple users to that folder so that they can access all of the content of that folder. Question in chat, how comprehensive are UJA's internal remediation tools? For contrast, for example, is that something that could be resolved within the platform, or do some fixes require you to remediate within a Word document, for example, before rechecking? Most issues can be fixed directly in User Panorama, including contrast. So contrast, if you have issues in the contrast between foreground text and background color, then that can be changed. It will give you a color picker with hex codes, and so you can insert the hex code of a color that you would like to change that foreground text content to. It will also give you the accessibility contrast score. So it's going to give you a contrast ratio between the foreground and the background content, and it's going to tell you whether or not that content passes. It will flag some colors that pass contrast. It will still flag them as needing to be changed because there are two levels of standards for contrast, and there's different expectations for contrast ratios depending on large text versus smaller text. So do not rely upon whether it says pass or fail for the contrast. Instead, work to improve that contrast ratio. I typically would say 7.5 to 1 or higher is going to be good in most contexts, and it will give you that ratio and allow you to change the color. There are a few things it flags. Very few, but there are a few things with flags that you cannot fix directly in User Panorama. And in that context, there will not be a button that says fix issue. It'll just tell you the issue, and there's no button for you to do. And those you would need to fix over in Word or Adobe Acrobat or whatever your source program is. Let's see, all of these are still processing. Okay, this one finally did process. Okay, so here we've got, we were looking to see if the structural remediation did a better job here. Okay, this is, I think, done a better job interpreting this content since just re-tagging it with the tool. It came in with a bunch of tags, likely from the program it was built in. So if this was built in Adobe InDesign or Photoshop, it's probably pulling those tags in from there. And those tags might be very difficult to work with. And these are, I think, a lot clearer and there's less of the kind of unnecessary tag nesting and things. So this is significantly improved. We still have some work we might need to do, but this is an example where doing the retagging automatically can be really helpful. You also have the ability to retag a specific part of the PDF. That is something you might want to do in certain contexts, but just wanted to make you aware of that option. So again, we could use here, we could use the structural remediation tool to reorganize and reorder if we want to make sure that that reading order is accurate, and to change any of these as appropriate to the correct tags for that content. We've got issues here. Here's an example of contrast issues, and we have the issue that um, this particular bit of text is indicating low contrast. And again, we have it saying pass, even though this particular ratio is typically not going to be passing in most contexts. So you can change this color. We could go to a darker color. I understand these are brand colors, so please be aware that you might be changing things that are out of alignment with UMass Boston brand standards, so please be aware of that. You might also want to double check text ratios, contrast ratios in other programs. Again, multiple checkers is helpful. Sometimes User Panorama doesn't recognize the background color correctly, especially on shadow text like this. Sometimes it doesn't quite identify that correctly. So I would pop this into, there's a ton of free contrast checkers online. Encourage you to pop it into there, just pop the colors into those and double check the contrast ratios there, but you can change the contrast ratios. I think it is actually incorrectly identifying it with the background shadow here, because when I made it darker, yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I would double check these in a different program as well. And then we have alternative description, so we can add alt text to these images as necessary. There are, I believe, 10 of these images. And the first one it's having is this image in the top left, which this is an example of a decorative one. So we're going to mark that as decorative, but other ones it's going to be highlighting different images as well. So we can go through and add appropriate alt text from there. We are about at time. If anybody needs further help with accessibility, we have a number of resources. There's also our knowledge base, which walks through a variety of information about how to access User Panorama, how to run accessibility reports, etc. We will likely be running more sessions on User Panorama in the future. We do not have any scheduled at this point right now, but we will likely be running more sessions on this. So I encourage you to tell your colleagues about it and tell them to be on the lookout for advertisements of additional sessions about User Panorama, because we would really love everybody at the university to work with this tool to help make the content more accessible.